It's Monday night, and you know what that means. Jersey First TV proudly brings to you the latest edition of Real Talk, and certainly I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, top Latino as voted on by the Latino Spirit Online magazine, along with the United States Latino Affairs Initiative, and without a doubt, ladies and gentlemen, I'll continue to be the weapon of mass disruption because my level of honesty now more than ever is truly necessary in this era of journalistic deception. That's right, folks. It's the people's choice and the people's voice. It's Fernando Uribe. Happy Monday to you all as we continue here in the month of August. Folks, summer is just winding down. And I don't know about you, but I don't mind the summer coming to an end. You know, I like the fall. I love the leaves changing color. The NFL is back. And folks, is there anything better than Sunday Fun Day? And you know how much I get into the NFL during the season. So as far as I'm concerned, I woke up this morning at 68 degrees. That's what the temperatures I like. And I'm sure many of you do as well. And folks, of course, I want to thank you all for tuning in from wherever and however you may be doing so right now on Facebook Live via StreamYard, of course, on the Jersey First YouTube page. And ladies and gentlemen, of course, I can't say enough how much, just really how grateful I am to all of you that tune in every single week. Of course, support us on all of our social media platforms. Of course, if you haven't done so already, make sure you like us on Facebook, of course, Real Talk with Fernando Uribe, and also Jersey First. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Twitter, as well as subscribe to us on YouTube. We're always watching YouTube for some reason. I'm always listening to podcasts, whether it's about politics, pro wrestling, sports, Marvel comics, whatever it is, folks. We're always on YouTube for some reason. Click the subscribe button, and you'll be automatically notified of all the great content brought to you by Jersey First TV. And of course, whether you get your podcasts on Spotify or SoundCloud, download Jersey First. And whether you're coming back from Tiki Mondays down the shore at Point Pleasant, maybe you're taking the kids school shopping for clothes, for new tech for the new school year, maybe you're visiting your in-laws, whatever it is you're doing, folks, I'm pretty sure you have your smartphone with you. And of course, maybe your tablet, whatever it is, you have some sort of technology with you, folks. Check out Jersey First TV everywhere and anywhere you go throughout the summer of 2024, folks. And I cannot say this enough. I say it every single week, and I'll keep repeating it. It's an absolute privilege to be on the dream team of Garden State Media. That's right, folks. It's Jersey First TV, always educating and advocating for the residents of this great state here in New Jersey. Of course, brand new episodes of the Nader Narrative are hosted by the amazing Elizabeth Nader every Thursday. And of course, brand new episodes of Bridging the Gap hosted by AJ Malillo and Steve Ramola also premiere on Thursdays. And folks, every Monday night live, check your local listings, of course. You check out brand new episodes of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe right here on Jersey First TV. Folks, we got a jam-packed show for you today. You definitely want to stick around for final thoughts. I'm going to have a lot to say about one of the more useless clowns in New Jersey media, and that's Jay Lasseter. It seems he, wants to, air his grievances or just really criticize anybody and everybody on social media. Of course, his latest target is my mayor and state senator, Brian Stack. I'll kind of fill you in as to why Jay Lasseter is up to his usual stupidity later on during final thoughts. And speaking of stupidity, folks, I'll also have a lot to say about the latest stupidity from Insider and Jay, and of course, a column that they felt somehow it was, appropriate to publish. People lending their names, thinking that the resident, left-wing propagandist in New Jersey activism, Patricia Campos Medina, would be a good fit for incumbent U.S. Senator Bob Menendez, as he's due to step down later on next week. And by state law, Governor Phil Murphy will get to appoint someone temporarily in that seat. Somehow, a bunch of slapnuts in New Jersey, politics, activism, whatever, feel that this woman is a good fit for the U.S. Senate. I'm going to tell you why they're dead wrong. And quite frankly, folks, we have to stop giving oxygen to clowns like Patty Campos Medina. And also, folks, not just with final thoughts, but I also want to really give a shout out to, I think people that make a big difference, as I feel every week here on the program. I'm going to start a new segment here on the show, and I'm going to tell you about Fernando fans, not just in New Jersey, but all throughout the country. I had the privilege of traveling to the great freedom-loving state of Florida and got to see one of my fellow Fernando fans there who tunes in every single Monday night, Luis Castellanos. A big shout out to him later in the program. You definitely want to stick around for that. But folks, hey, listen, it's election season, not just really at the top of the ticket. Of course, no one in New Jersey media talks about this ongoing political season like yours truly here at Jersey First. And of course, there's a big U.S. Senate race in New Jersey. There are certainly, obviously, the presidential election. We have House of Representative seats. But folks, across the river, we have some very important state legislative seats in the great Empire State, in the great state of New York. And of course, you know what? It's important to talk about them because just like New Jersey's a mess because of a lot of far left legislators in Trenton, well, folks, let's be honest. The reason New York is in such a mess right now, quite frankly, is because of far left legislators in Albany. And one of those individuals that I have the pleasure of speaking to today, she is running for the state assembly in the great state of New York in the 123rd legislative district in Albany, folks. She's a big fan of the show and a stand-up lady, folks. Dying for you to meet Lisa OKeefe as she joins us here tonight on Real Talk. Lisa, how are you?
Hey, I'm really good. How are you?
It's good to see you on here. And folks, again, if you're interested in volunteering or donating your time or any of your disposable income, please go to lisaokeefe123.com to get involved with this great campaign in the state of New York. Now, Lisa, again, great to have you on here. And certainly, I like to cover politics, not just in New Jersey, but throughout the tri-state area, because what happens in New York really affects us. And what happens in New Jersey tends to affect New York as well. So it's important to talk to potential legislative candidates all throughout the tri-state area. And folks, if you're not familiar with District 123 in New York State, it encompasses mostly all of Broome County. That's Broome. And it contains the city of Binghamton, as well as the townships of Union and Vestal. Am I missing any, Lisa?
Yeah, when they say the Township of Union, what they actually mean is Johnson City, Endicott, and Endwell, as well as Vestal and Binghamton, as you had mentioned.
Okay, good stuff. Again, folks, that's what's important. You meet candidates, you get to know the districts that they're running in, and certainly why they care so much. So, Lisa, let's get to this here. You're a fiscal conservative, from what I can tell. You're running as a Republican in District 123. Obviously, I think the big question I always like to ask candidates is, what was the epiphany? What prompted this desire to run for an assembly seat in the New York State Legislature?
Great question. And by the way, I'm actually on the Republican, conservative, and the independent lines. But what happened was I moved back home several years ago. And at that time, I told my daughter, we are the Valley of Opportunity. You're going to love this area. And when I came back home, I saw how much we changed. 20 years ago, when my opponent took her seat, we were still known as the Valley of Opportunity. Every single person thrived. And then under her time in office, so she's been in there 20 years now, we have seen the government become expansive and expensive, and we are now known as the second highest poverty rate out of any county in New York State. In fact, our poverty rate is twice that of the national level. And on top of that, our homeless rate has increased by 50% between the years of 2020, 2021. So she is definitely going in the wrong direction.
Well, when we think about what New York has become, Lisa, I mean, obviously, New Jersey exhibits the same type of problems. 20, 30 years ago, it wasn't as blue of a state as it is now. I mean, here in New Jersey, it's really as blue as Windex. There are pockets of New Jersey that are very conservative and as red as my jacket, very much like New York, right? We do see more, let's say, members of the House of Representatives in Washington representing New York, not obviously unlike New Jersey. And we see pockets of New York State, obviously in the legislature in Albany, that are very red. But what tends to happen is sort of densely populated blue areas are so heavily populated, and they sort of just overwhelm these other red areas, and which is why, New York State continues to be blue by and large in Albany, and at the same time passing very destructive policies, just like in New Jersey, coddling illegals, raising property taxes, raising, to your point, the state budget. Here in New Jersey, the emperor here, Phil Murphy, he never met a tax he hasn't loved. And it seems like Kathy Hochul pretty much succeeding, Andrew Cuomo. Same type, same Democrat, same progressive, same type of woke fool that believes in taxing us to death.
Absolutely. She does not From the governor on down, the Democrats really have no idea what they're doing with the economy. I used to teach economics, and even the most basic of things they don't understand, where you make sure you take care of your your needs before your wants. They're always putting the wants first, and they keep expanding on our budget with things that we don't need, and they go ahead and switch on things. If I could, I would just mention a few things. For example, we have such a huge poverty rate, like I mentioned, and yet we had $800 million that was earmarked for the family and children's services, so critically important for these people. And at the last minute, we switched it over to the Buffalo Bills so they could go ahead and redecorate their stadium. By the way, the governor's husband is one who supplies all the concession stands for that stadium. So we're constantly doing things like that and expanding. During COVID, when everybody was losing their jobs and multi-generational businesses were closing, our state legislature, they voted themselves a 29% pay raise. We are now the highest paid state legislature in the nation. Nobody comes close. And on top of that, they put down that they could have a second job because they consider this part-time. You look at places like Florida and Texas, they're making about 10,000 a year. We're doing 142, and that's before all the perks and all the committees. They have forgotten that we, the voters, we're the employers. They're the employees, and we can fire them at any time with our votes.
Listen, I mean, that's just an egregious amount of income there. And again, I get it that, traveling to the state capital. Listen, New Jersey's obviously smaller geographically than New York, but I know that for a lot of legislators, traveling to Trenton, which is kind of centrally located, is a hike. I get it. It's certainly, but I mean, to the idea that, people traveling up and down New York and going up to Albany, I mean, it's a hike for a lot of people. But the idea that you're making high six figures is crazy. I mean, again, it's not a job that, again, this is not AP calculus, folks. It's not AP trigonometry. Okay. I mean, yes, you have to understand legislation. You have to understand bills and legislating. But my God, Lisa, I'm seeing legislators, to your point, making high six figures. And that's not what legislators are really paid to do.
No, absolutely not. They're supposed to be responsible to their community and to the people. And that's why I made sure that I got onto 3 different lines, because I want the people to know that I'm going to go ahead and represent all the people. It's not about my interest or a certain set of interests. It's about what makes sense. I'm going to go ahead and have focus groups with different people so I can make sure that the legislation I put in makes sense. So we're not going ahead and funding things that we have to abandon. I mean, how many of us remember the congestion pricing idea? She abandoned that last minute. And what happened? We are stuck for $1 billion that we have to pay for a failed project. And I'd like to say that that is the exception, but no, it's the rule. And they keep adding to things. Very few people know this, but if you run for New York State Assembly now, you are given up to $175,000 of taxpayer money. $175,000. It doesn't matter if it's a primary or a general election, you're given that. And if you're running for Senate, it is $350,000. Now you times that by how many assembly seats we have, how many Senate seats we have, and then the price keeps going up higher. That money could be used for programs and services that we need. And when I asked Albany why this was allowed, they said to even the playing field. And it doesn't do that because more Democrats run than Republicans, for number one. And number two, if you want to even the playing field, put caps on how much people can spend. Don't force the taxpayers to have to pay more to go ahead and finance so you can have one more flyer coming to their house.
That's mind-boggling to me that tax dollars are being used to fund these campaigns. And again, such egregious amounts, not just for a state assembly seat, but for a state Senate seat where, listen, if you're looking to run for office, listen, I ran for state assembly many years ago. I ran a grassroots campaign. I understand the struggle, Lisa. So, when you approached me to come on the show, I said, listen, if I can help a grassroots candidate, I'll do that. I know what it's like to run a grassroots campaign, to have to fundraise from scratch, to have to literally rely on social media, having to rely on volunteers, phone banking, trying to have space. I mean, folks at home, it costs money. It costs money to rent a place, to even hire some operatives, whatever the case may be. I mean, you're doing it as grassroots as it comes, Lisa. And I think that people forget at home. It's like, oh, well, she's running for office. The state Republican Party funds people. That's not true. They don't fund everybody in not every case. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I am not getting any help at all from my party, not through volunteers and not through financing. This has been 100% a grassroots effort. And that's because I told them since day one, I am not going to ever be just on their agenda. I mean, I definitely love my platform. I believe in my platform, but it doesn't always work for all districts all the time. What works for downstate New York is not going to work for where I am upstate. So if something is presented by the Republicans and it's something that's great for my community, 100% I'm going to go ahead and vote for it. But if it's something that actually takes away from my area, we can't afford that. So I'm always going to vote for the community because I'm supposed to be the voice of the people. I was in office once before. That's exactly what I did then, and they respected that. Maybe not in the beginning, they didn't, but they caught on to that, and that's what I'm doing now. So everything that I do is grassroots, and I'm actually fortunate because doing it that way, I get to walk door to door and actually hear the voice of the people, so I know how to represent them.
Lisa, should you be successful coming up this November and take office really in January 2025, what do you want to tackle first? I know you've mentioned the severity of poverty in the district, obviously excessive spending. It seems like, the state budget's getting fatter than, a kid at a bakery, basically, and like being left unsupervised. But what do you want to tackle in addition to those important topics once you take office in January?
That's a great question because we have so much we have to tackle. There isn't any demographic that isn't being heard here. But polls have shown that the number one reason why we have a mass exodus out of New York is because of the high taxes. So that is what I'm going to tackle first. So this thing about let's go ahead and give every candidate all of this money. No, that's going to go ahead and get widespread publicity. And I'm going to go ahead and fight against that. I'm also going to go ahead and mention that we should all take a pay cut when we're in the assembly, and hoping that the Senate also likes that idea as well, because all the state legislatures should go ahead and take a pay cut to show solidarity. And we have to start being responsible with our budget. We have to look through it and find waste. When I've been looking through it, I've been finding hundreds of thousands of dollars in waste. And then I've been finding hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars that is not being utilized, and it isn't even found. Like I found out that with the elderly, that there was $200 million that they forgot to go ahead and give to the Office for the Aging. So now they're going to have it going forward. But people should be really looking at the budget. I'm going to go ahead and find the waste. Millions of dollars in waste, get rid of it. We want transparency. When there is transparency, when we know how people vote on things and what's being spent, that's when they start being accountable to people. Here in New York, we spent $500,000 to find out how shrimp react on a treadmill. We do a lot of things like that we really have no reason to do except to spend money. When we have people who are sleeping on the street, when our vets are not being taken care of, when our elderly are being silenced, we can't afford that. So it's about shrinking down our government, making them responsible to people so our taxes can drop.
Well said, folks. If you're just joining us live right now, it's 6:17 here on the East Coast. And my guest tonight is District 123 Assembly candidate in the state of New York, Lisa O'Keefe, joins us here live on Real Talk. Folks, it takes 2 seconds. Like, comment, and share right there on all of your social media platforms. And you let everybody know how much you enjoy Real Talk with Fernando Uribe right here on Jersey First TV. And folks, if you're interested in donating your time or any disposable income and supporting Lisa O'Keefe for State Assembly, you can go to their website, lisaokeefe123.com. For more information about her campaign. You mentioned, obviously, the high cost of living, which is causing certainly the massive migration out of New York. Same problem here in New Jersey. The one thing about New York, I mean, I'm not sure where they rank, but I know New Jersey has the highest property taxes in the nation. That's fact. It's an unfortunate distinction to have. It's averaging a little over $9,300 really per taxpayer. It's crazy. And I know New York is suffering the same problem. I mean, there are very affluent areas, but Albany, just like Trenton here in New Jersey, continues to just, suffocate us with taxation, with regulation, with really sort of infringing on us at all times. Listen, we saw 4 years ago during COVID, we saw what then Governor Andrew Cuomo was doing, just like Phil Murphy here in New Jersey, kept the state shut down longer than it had to during the pandemic. We're learning now the impact of learning loss for our kids in our public schools. Obviously, a lot of money wasted on projects that should not have gone out there during COVID, obviously almost basically emptying the treasury basically out there in Albany, just like here in New Jersey. And we're not better off for it. We've seen deficits rise. We've seen budgets increases at all levels. But one thing that obviously we learned from COVID as well, and I think it's still sort of an ongoing problem, is sort of the impact on mental health, right? The impact on residents. Obviously, a lot of residents are still struggling even 4 years after COVID. And yes, folks, COVID's over. Stop wearing any masks. I mean, let's stop with the nonsense now, okay? Again, I'm not trying to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but folks, I think we're smart enough to know what happened 4 years later. The bottom line is, though, whether it's these like overly restrictive COVID measures, budgets, spending, and taxes, at least I got to tell you, another issue in New York, just like in New Jersey. I mean, go on Twitter, go on Instagram, go on Facebook every day. What are we seeing in New York City and New York State? The high crime rate. It's become absolutely disgusting to go out in New York City. Parts of New York State are almost unlivable now because of, let's be honest, bail reform, cash bail, these awful criminal justice policies that the far left in Albany have enabled.
And let me tell you something that probably most people don't know about. And this was law, and it was a bill originally that my opponent, Donna Lepardo, went ahead and ushered in. She was the sponsor. So let's just say that you go to my house and you do everything heinously possible to me. And I'm not saying you, because I'm going to make you the good guy, Fernando, but we'll just pretend that an imaginary person is doing everything heinous possible, stabbing me, everything else. So you see it. Who are you going to go ahead and call to help? Who are you going to call?
Well, theoretically, I'd like to think I have something at home to arm myself or protect myself, but theoretically 911.
Perfect. So you call the police come, they arrest him, he's ticketed, he's released. So now the Sixth Amendment says that when you're in trial, you can confront the people who say they saw you do the crime, and you need to have that in there. That's so critically important, because otherwise we'd have people making up stories. But what Donna Lepardo introduced, and it became law, and I verified it with all the different police stations, is 35 days after you're released. So 35 days after you're released, months and months before your trial, while you're walking around free, you are given the names and home addresses of every single witness. So now people are afraid of being witnesses, because what do they think that person is going to do, knowing that that witness is a person who could send them away to jail for who knows how long, or they can walk away free. So that puts the witness at risk. Now, if a police officer comes and witnesses the crime while it's still happening, he too will have to give his home address, putting his family at risk. So now what is the reason for him to come while the crime is still happening? And then on top of it, the last part of that bill that became law says that all he has to do is ask his lawyer to get a court order to say he has to come into my house and talk to me. So now this imaginary person goes ahead and comes into my house with his lawyer, and he can berate me with a lot of questions, ask me such things as, so Lisa, where did I stab you first? Were you afraid you were going to die? How much did you scream? So now people don't even want to report crimes. So when you see that in some areas that the crime levels are decreasing, I ask you, are they really? Or is it the fact that people are afraid to be witnesses, and people are afraid who are victims to even say that, yeah, I'm a victim of a crime?
It's mind-boggling to me that the state legislature in Albany, very much like Trenton here in New Jersey, are just tone deaf when it comes to it's funny where Democrats on the far left also accuse Republicans and conservatives like me, like, oh, well, we don't believe in law and order, or we don't believe in democracy, or we don't believe in quality of life, when every woke policy, every far left policy that I can think of, and folks, I'm not just a journalist, I'm an academic too, so I can talk policy all day, has done nothing but cause destruction and despair. And it's not conservatives that are proposing policies that are destroying the quality of life and contributing to the rapid crime rates. It's far left Democrats, it's the woke crowd, it's progressives. And again, it just boggles my mind. People that claim to, have the best of intentions, and, really it's like, well, they're thinking with their heart, but unfortunately their head's in their ass.
Absolutely. And, we have Democrat majority in the Assembly, in the Senate. We have a Democrat governor, and there is a lot of these insane laws that are being passed. There's right now a bill, it didn't get signed by the governor as yet, but it said the most you can be in jail is 25 years before you're eligible for parole. And they mention if you do murder in the first degree, if you do a terrorist action, or if you do biological or chemical warfare. What are they doing? They're putting the citizens of New York at risk. And I love the fact that you have me on the show, because we are bordering states and we share a lot of the same concerns, and people pick up on different legislations from each other. So we have to stay strong on these things. The good news is I go to a lot of homes that the people are registered as Democrats, and when I bring it up to them, where I actually go ahead and role play, where I make them the victim and so forth, all of a sudden it starts to click. Because it's funny, I know a person who is a professor of law, and he was very much about defund the police until he found out that all the professors were being beaten up and they're not allowed to do anything about it. Now he's a Republican because you have to put it at their level. Until then, I don't know where their mind goes. But the bottom line is, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. We've been voting in these Democrats over and over again, and all we've had from them is insanity, and that has to stop.
Isn't it funny that the crowd of defund the police from 4 years ago, right, when we were watching, BLM rioters literally destroying cities? I mean, we saw it in New York City. We saw department stores looted. We saw regular grocery stores looted, right? All in the name of, oh my God, the outrage over a career criminal, right? That we all know that's what the BLM riots are about. And we saw that in New York City. We saw it in New York State. We saw it in cities all across the country. And now a lot of these defund the police crowds, it's like, well, all right, you want to defund the police. What's going to happen when someone goes to your house or tries to break into your home? We're going to call the Ghostbusters? I mean, for God's sakes, it's mind-boggling to me, though, Lisa, when I hear progressives and the far left and all the woke fools and the pronoun patrol that are always about these identity issues and these far left causes that at the end of the day, all they're doing is destroying the quality of life for families, for, let's say, young couples, working single moms and dads. It's crazy to me how more and more people, and listen, let's be honest, the liberal establishment media, whether it's in New York, New Jersey, or nationally, certainly don't do candidates like you any favors.
No, absolutely not. And let me tell you about something that is going to be on our ballot in November, because it may be coming your way as well, because everybody seems to pick up on things that happen. It's called the ERA Proposition 1. So the question is going to be, do you support equal rights? People are all going to say yes. And if this passes, it's going to be in our Constitution. And the person that I'm running against, she's the number 1 sponsor on that. Be very, very careful, New Yorkers, when you see that, because it has nothing to do with the equal rights. In fact, we have equal rights through the 14th Amendment and in New York State with the Equal Protection Clause, Section 11, that says all people in practice will be treated equally. They're also trying to say it's about abortion, that if they don't get this through in the Constitution, we won't have the right to abortion. Again, not true. We have that codified in New York, and we're one of the most lenient states. So what it is, it's about control. Our government found out during COVID that they could really control us, where we work, who we hang out with, and they keep expanding that. They're taking away our freedom of choices, even when it comes to, we can only get EVs in the future. We're not going to have the choice. And, I talked to so many dealerships that say that these regulations are killing them and they're not going to be able to stay around. So if it's not about that, what is it about? It's about actually 2 things. It's taking away our rights and our freedoms in 2 specific ways. Number 1, Title IX. If you know of any woman who's ever played sports, this is going to say that all men and trans women are going to be able to compete against women. In my area, we have 1 out of every 4 women who graduate from high school gets a sports scholarship, and that's so critically important so they could pull themselves up out of poverty. That's not going to happen. They're not going to be able to compete against men, and they aren't going to have any safe spaces. In addition to that, they're going to be taking away parents' rights on a lot of things. And my opponent has already started with that because she introduced a bill that says that if you are in kindergarten, so think of the age of kindergarten, if you're in kindergarten, you have to be, this is mandatory, take comprehensive sexual education classes. And parents don't have a say in it. And our Constitution says that you, as a parent, have vested rights that are so important the government cannot interfere with it without due process, and yet they're trying to take away the rights. If a child wants to go ahead, even if they're 4 years old, and get a sex change, parents can't have a say about it, because you could go to the government and somehow the government's going to have the money for that. So they're going to create a lot of harm to children, and parents aren't going to be able to step in. So I see if this passes, there's going to be a lot of lawsuits. There's going to be a lot of chaos. So when you see it on the ballot, make sure that you know what it's really about. And I hope this doesn't come the way to New Jersey.
Well, I can just say, listen, here, the alphabet mob is out of control in New Jersey. I mean, they've done a pretty heinous job of infiltrating the state legislature in terms of the type of, really the types of books that are available to our children in our public libraries, in our school libraries. And again, listen, when I was 5 years old, all I cared about was playing Little League, video games. I mean, I wasn't really thinking about girls. I mean, I'm 5 years old. Okay. Thankfully, as I grew, a little bit, older, not too many more years, but I mean, yeah, I like girls. I still love girls. I mean, that's great. But the idea that we have to start sexualizing content for our kids as young as 5, Lisa, it's ridiculous. And we have all these progressives and all these woke, and again, they're coddled by the alphabet mob, right? In New Jersey, obviously in New York. And what the problem is that now what they're doing is when there's pushback by parents, and by the way, parents groups here in New Jersey are very strong, such as Moms for Liberty. I mean, they have great chapters here in New Jersey. They're fighting tooth and nail here for parental rights. I know there's a lot of great organizations in New York that are doing the exact same thing. They're trying to go to Albany and tell these legislators, hey, do me a favor. We get it. It's not 20, 30 years ago. Okay. I remember what sex education courses were like when I was a senior in high school. I get that. But the idea that someone thinks that exposing children to sexualized content as early as 5 years old, or drag queen story time, right, to kids in elementary school, like, why this fixation on sexualizing everything in front of children? It's and again, that doesn't make me a homophobe or a transphobe or anything else, because I know there are plenty of people on the left and all the woke fools and progressives that's their automatic card to play. Well, Fernando Uribe, when he uses the term alphabet mob or the alphabet mafia, no, I'm not being derogatory. I'm actually telling people that the tactics are mob-like. They're basically trying to force you to acquiesce to their lifestyle, to their thought process. And if you don't, there's going to be consequences.
Yeah, and it's really scary because, in my opinion, this is child abuse. And psychologists have always said that if you introduce content to a child too soon, it's going to cause fear and a lifelong process of mental problems. They're not going to be able to process it in a positive way. And yet they're forcing this on children. Right. The other part of this as well says that because they can't discriminate against age at all, which is why that children will be able to ask for different sex changes and so forth. I mean, what little kid doesn't want to be a million different things when they're little? But, luckily that the parents will go ahead and guide them and let them have their imaginary friends, but they know where to draw the line. The parents aren't going to go ahead and let them do something that causes damage to their mind or their body. But because they can't discriminate against age, if this is passed, it means that children can go ahead and get into destructive behavior. But on top of that, you hear about all of these people who hurt children. And it's disgusting how short of prison sentences they get. Well, now they're going to get even shorter because you can't give them a stiffer penalty because they hurt a child, because that would be age discrimination against the criminal. And that is wrong on so many different levels. We have got to fight against this.
No, I agree. And something else you mentioned as well about, it seems like every election cycle, reproductive rights is always on the ballot. It seems like the left, I mean, they enjoy weaponizing this. And again, just like New York, here in New Jersey, it's codified into state law. You can have it, again, and I've said this before, and for my audience, it bears repeating. Here in New Jersey, if you're a woman, a biological woman with a uterus, okay, folks, those are the only people that can have babies, not pregnant people, women, okay? If you can terminate a pregnancy up until birth in New Jersey, it's codified, okay? For all the ladies out there, it's the summer, right? Single girl summer. Guess what? You have a lot of your drunken escapades. Wake up Monday morning, you need a plan B. Well, guess what? You can go get one in New Jersey. It's readily accessible. It's right by the counter. I know. I've had to buy a good amount in my lifetime, so I know what they look like. So this idea about reproductive infringements and reproductive freedom is on the ballot. How? In New York and New Jersey, when women, biological women that have uteruses, okay, have everything at their disposal when it comes to terminating a pregnancy, Lisa. It drives me crazy how the left continues to weaponize, terminating a pregnancy when, let's be honest, this isn't birth control, folks. Shouldn't be. But the idea that it's under attack is nonsense, Lisa. Where am I wrong here?
No, you're absolutely right. The reason that they want this in the Constitution is because if we get enough Republicans, we get enough conservatives into the state legislature, we can go ahead and change these laws. But if it gets into our Constitution, it is going to be near impossible to change. And that is what they're looking at, and that we cannot afford. And you're absolutely right what you're talking about with Plan B. People can go ahead and have where they terminate a pregnancy right up until when they're delivering. That is murder. And I get tired of hearing from people say, well, you can't tell a woman what to do with her body. Well, I'm a woman, and I will tell you, if anybody ever told me what to do with my body, I would absolutely fight them on that. But we're not talking about my body. We're talking about another body that's inside me. And if you go ahead and you read the New York State laws when it comes to this, they don't mention the word fetus or body. What they actually say is any being that cannot sustain life on themselves by themselves, that you could go ahead and terminate. So who else does that mention? Well, there's a lot of elderly that need help, right? There's people who have different genetic problems, people who have cystic fibrosis and so forth. In fact, right now, my opponent has also introduced legislation so we can have assisted suicide. And I think it's time we stop looking at how to kill our people and actually start looking at how to help them.
Isn't it interesting? Like far left people have these gender reveals, right? Like these obnoxious, insufferable gender reveals. But wait a minute, but that's not a person. So what gender are you revealing? That's not a person in your uterus. It's mind-boggling to me, like the stupidity of people on the far left when it comes to this, when it comes to the way that they don't value life.
Yeah. And the funny thing too is, how do they know what the gender is? Isn't that assuming things? I mean, even in California, the governor is allowing people to start inventing genders because he thinks that there aren't enough. So they kind of go against their own policies when they're doing that.
Yeah. And by the way, folks, I took high school biology. I took anatomy and physiology, an AP course, and I passed it with an A. And by the way, folks, it's two genders, just in case anyone, spoiler alert, in case anyone hasn't taken AP biology yet. I know I did. Folks, it's 6:35 here on the East Coast. My guest tonight here live with me again, folks, like, comment, and share. It takes 2 seconds to show your support for Real Talk with Fernando Uribe via Jersey First TV. My guest tonight is State Assembly candidate in the great state of New York in District 123. Lisa OKeefe joins us here live on Real Talk. Again, folks, check out our website, LisaOKeefe123.com for more information about getting involved with the campaign, donating your time or money to this great grassroots campaign in the Empire State. Speaking of the Empire State, something that people always think about, Lisa, I know it's on your platform as well. But I don't want to push back against you, but I think for our viewers, let's get some critical thinking here, because very much it's a problem in New York, just like it is in New Jersey, and that's traffic congestion. And that's mass transit, infrastructure issues. Listen, where I live 10 minutes outside the Lincoln Tunnel. So I walk 2 blocks. I look at Manhattan every day. I have a light rail that's 2 blocks from my house. If I need to use mass transit, that's wonderful. I can kind of get around for the most part, but I prefer to drive everywhere. That's not the case throughout a lot of northwestern New Jersey, central and south Jersey. I venture to guess that that's probably the same problem that goes on in New York State. It's not just about living in New York City and Long Island and the MTA and the LIR and whatever. Sure, that's great. But as you get into New York State, as you get up into the suburban areas, yeah, mass transit isn't as abundant or plentiful. And there's traffic congestion. Realistically, can we ever really fix this as populations continue to grow in states like New York and New Jersey?
We actually can. We just have to think it through. And we have to make sure that we're not doing anything that penalizes people. When the governor came up with her congestion pricing plan, that was penalizing people. They had to take different routes according to what she was doing. And that adds more congestion actually rather than less. And then on top of that, there's all the extra cost. Well, if trucks are going in and it's costing them more to get to the stores, now the stores have to charge more for their goods, right? And we have so many people that are on fixed incomes. And that's what we keep forgetting about, that we have so many seniors that are on fixed incomes. And then on top of that, we're really not doing what we really need to have done for the infrastructure. We have so many bridges and roads that are in disrepair, a lot of them that are actually in dangerous shape, and yet we're not going ahead and addressing it right. You go to places like Texas, and granted they don't have the snow that we have, but they use different material to go ahead and make the roads last longer so you don't have the potholes. Well, if we take that money and invest it in coming up with different routes, that's the way to go. When I lived in Connecticut and I was in elected office then, we planned to go ahead and grow Stamford very rapidly. But the first thing we did was we looked at the infrastructure. How do we plan the routes? We figured out about when it's rush hour, what is this going to have as an impact? So it's not something that you just throw out there. You have to look at it like a project manager. Go ahead and have your milestones, work up to your goal.
It's interesting about potholes. I mean, I was just driving to Flushing yesterday for a meet and greet. I'm a big pro wrestling fan. One of my favorite pro wrestlers was in Flushing, Queens. Shout out to Marino's Pizza and restaurant out there in Flushing. But even driving through the George Washington Bridge, through the Triborough, through the I swear to God, I think I have to check my alignment this week because the amount of potholes, I don't have enough fingers and toes to count the potholes that I saw just on the bridges and roads. Never mind the residential areas like Queens or anything else. But it's crazy to me, though, Lisa, where the legislature in Albany knows that road conditions and infrastructure continue to be a serious problem. Again, while people are moving out of New York, people are moving in and people are reproducing. We are seeing rapid population growth in all 50 states, obviously here in New York and just like in New Jersey. It's just mind-boggling to me how tone deaf the legislature is in Albany, just like in New Jersey as well. I think like the leadership in the legislature really is very tone deaf, where they believe in funding these, woke projects and coddling illegals, very much like New York. New Jersey gave driver's licenses to illegals. Like, who thought that was a good idea? And now, by law, now they have to register their vehicle, they have to insure it. And let's be honest, a lot of them aren't very, don't exactly have a so high socioeconomic status. You're not going to be insuring your car very well. That's going to put drivers in peril on the road. It's all these far left projects that legislatures think that, they're well-intentioned, but at the end of the day, they're causing more harm than good. And I think, again, in Albany, for example, I think they're not looking at the real infrastructure issues, to your point about bridges and roads. I mean, there's never not a time that people aren't on the road in New York, that the roads are not congested.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And we don't have enough options either. There's other cities that go ahead and they have train transportation. Scranton in Pennsylvania even went ahead and did that to get into New York City because they know that people go into New York City either for work or because of doctor's visits or to spend money on different events and so forth. And yet it's something that's so easy to go ahead and tackle. And we don't bring this into the environment, into our discussions. And again, it's because they just throw it out like we have all the money in the world. And yet they don't stop to look at the fact that we've been spending a lot more money than we're bringing in. So we're broke. We're broke. And what are they going to do to go ahead and adjust that? They're going to raise our taxes, and they're going to continue to spend that money on things that don't make sense. Like I told you about with the shrimp and the treadmills, like I told you about with the Buffalo Bills Stadium, rather than to the people where we want to raise them up because they forgot that we want every single person to thrive. A community doesn't work unless you take care of everyone. And I really love that you brought up about mental health because that is something people do not talk about enough. And we're not giving enough resources for that. In my area, we have a lot of Vietnam vets that are homeless, and we go ahead and we throw them a bone, and then we go ahead and we're so proud of ourselves. We're not doing enough for them, and we should be increasing the mental health budget. And even when it comes to crime, a lot of these people, if they got the mental health and the substance abuse type of help that they need, they wouldn't be going to jail. And then you ask, well, where do we get the money from? It costs $134,000 a year to house one person in a jail. So you figure even if you save that one person, you take that $134,000 and you put it into mental health and substance abuse resources. It pays for itself. And now you go ahead and you have people who are thriving, who could be part of the economy because everybody wants to know that they have value. And that is the job of the people in elected office, to make sure that people recognize that they have value and that you care about hearing their voice. In my area, I hear over and over again how people feel that they've been silenced. And I've actually been blocked out of certain places, such as nursing homes, where they won't let me go in because I even have one person on my voicemail say, because they don't want the seniors to participate in the elections. And that is wrong. We have in our Constitution, we're allowed to do that. We have with Supreme Court cases, and yet I get blocked. So people are being silenced and they're not being heard.
And to even add more to this, I mean, obviously during the COVID era, obviously Andrew Cuomo as governor was responsible for killing seniors. We know that policies, he killed seniors. Kathy Hochul kind of continued that as well. So it's amazing to me where the concerns of seniors and veterans. Meanwhile, New York City Mayor Eric Adams and Kathy Hochul can find all this money to house illegals in these lavish hotels in New York City, for example. And again, that is at the expense of taxpayers, not just in New York City, but in New York State. Okay, yep. Folks, they're not printing money somewhere. I mean, this comes from somewhere, and this comes from tax dollars. And somehow Albany thinks it's okay to house all these illegals, to give them all this free health care. It's funny where, hey, there was a moment when Democrats and the left nationally would want to penalize you for not having health care, right? Well, remember the Affordable Care Act. Hey, there would be a fine if you didn't have health care, but somehow illegals get free health care at all turns. And, Albany is more than willing to enable that.
Yeah, and we're supposed to be a nation of laws, and yet we don't
Correct.
follow them. And I mean, my family, they were immigrants. I'm sure everybody can relate to that story, but it was something that was planned, and it was planned for a reason, because you wanted to make sure that there were enough jobs and that you could support the people as they came in. You didn't want everything flooding in one area. So you wanted to make sure also that the people were people that you didn't have to worry about, that they weren't terrorists coming over. And you also wanted to make sure that you were going ahead and you're making them safe as well. When they went ahead and they let all these people over, so many children are missing. And it's probably a lot more than the tens of thousands that they know about. So we did not do a service to them. We didn't do a service to us. And, when you were talking about all the money that New York State is spending, yeah, and they're spending it on lawsuits as well, because they keep fighting anything that makes sense. In New York City, I don't know if people know about this, but in New York City, they went ahead and gave illegals the right to vote in municipal elections. And Republicans went ahead and said, no, that is not the law. Now, granted, you're supposed to, when you register to vote, you go ahead and you say whether or not you're a citizen, and they take it for granted that you're telling the truth. But this was like one more step over. They actually came up with a law that said if you're illegal, you can vote in the municipal elections. So the Republicans said no, it held. The court said, yeah, they're absolutely not allowed to. So what it is New York City doing, which affects all of New York State because of the budgets and so forth, they are taking it to court. They're appealing it. They want the illegals to go ahead and vote in municipals. And where do we think that that's going to mushroom into?
Exactly. Again, it's sort of a small stepping stone to allowing illegals to vote in legislative elections, federal legislative elections, House races, Senate races, and ultimately for the presidency, where, again, Democrats in Albany, just like in Trenton, and all these far left activist groups, because I have them here in New Jersey and I go after them all the time, all these, progressive woke organizations that are all about coddling illegals, but they don't realize that their policies eventually, at some point, the bill comes due. Mm-hmm. The chickens come home to roost. It ruins the quality of life. It overcrowds our schools. It taps into our social services. It contributes to the decline of the quality of life. And again, I'm the son of immigrants. Okay, I'm a first generation American. I know what it's like. I saw my parents go through the struggle, learning a new language, developing job skills. I get it. So I understand the struggle of immigrants. I get it. But they came here the right way. They came here legally, like many others. But the idea that now we just have to, let's just coddle, let's just provide free housing, free healthcare at the expense of veterans, at the expense of the elderly on a fixed income, at the expense of single moms and dads that are working 1, 2, even 3 jobs to make ends meet. But sure, the optics are there. It seems like, again, it's almost like, you want to appease people outside of this country more than people in the country.
Yeah, and that's completely upside down. When I look at the Second Amendment and what they keep trying to do about taking guns away from law-abiding citizens, and yet they do everything to make sure that we don't have extra penalties against those criminals who use guns in a crime. So everything is completely upside down right now, and we have to change that. We have to we remember that it's us who has the power. We, through our vote, we can make a difference. We just have to believe that.
It really matters. Folks, it's 6:48 here on the East Coast. We'll be wrapping up shortly here with my guest tonight. She is District 123 Assembly candidate in the great state of New York, Lisa OKeefe, joining us here live on Real Talk. Folks, again, go to LisaOKeefe123.com. That's Lisa, OKeefe 123.com if you're looking to get involved, donate your time and or money to this great grassroots campaign. Lisa, obviously, it's a legislative election. Certainly, you're going door to door. Obviously, I'm looking at your social media. Shout out to your stunning daughter, Nikki. Again, not trying to be inappropriate on the air. Your stunning daughter there, helping out as she always is. But I noticed, obviously, you're going to town fairs, festivals, whatever the case may be. You're talking to people. You're talking to residents. You've been going door to door. What's been the feedback? Again, it's an election year. We know that really, let's be honest, what's on most people's minds is at the top of the ballot, right? President Trump, against Vice President Harris. It's become very tribal, very toxic. Obviously, people are, 6 months ago, this was the most unpopular vice president in the history of the Republic. And now all of a sudden she's the second coming. She's basically the female Obama. It's amazing how they've, the establishment media has been able to sort of manufacture this love affair for this woman. But the bottom line is that, yes, local races matter, legislative races matter. What's been the feedback for you and your team talking to residents as you're, again, going through these summer months and now the fall too?
Yeah, a lot of people do want to know how I'm going to vote on the president. And believe it or not, in my area, I have a lot of people who are Republicans who say because Trump is running, they're going to go ahead and vote Democrat straight down the line. And I ask them, I'm like, why? And they can never come up with really a reason.
Never.
I go ahead and I help them out. I'm like, well, we have one person who's running who doesn't know the difference between North Korea and South Korea. And then we have another person who's running who is the only president who was able to bring back the remains of our military after the Korean War.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, right there, it says it.
And it's funny where, again, the 45th president has policies that worked. Mm-hmm. And now, the current vice president, insults our intelligence by saying, well, on day one, when I'm elected, I'm going to work to reduce inflation and secure the border. You're in office now. It's like the woman in office is running to get into office because when she gets into office, that's when the problems get fixed. You're in office already. If you want to fix inflation, if you want to secure the border, why are we waiting for her to win? God forbid. But it's mind-boggling to me how people can be so emotional and just lack logic when she's in power. Donald Trump isn't in power. So if there was a way to fix inflation, our grocery bills, fuel, national security, quality of life, she can do it now with Sleepyhead, he's asleep at this hour. Those two people can actually have an effect now. It's mind-boggling to me how people can't come up with any decent answer. Well, she's a woman, she's Indian, all of a sudden she's black. I mean, what else is going to come up with?
Yeah, well, if you listen to her try to explain what inflation was, you know that she really doesn't know what's going on. And I'm very surprised by that because, in my opinion, I believe that a lot of this was planned because they decided to have the debate way before anybody's ever had a presidential debate, definitely before the convention. So that way they could go ahead and say, yeah, he's not competent anymore. We do have to replace him. And they had the media all on that. Well, while they were going ahead and planning that, they should have been teaching her things other than just word salad, where she goes ahead and puts together a whole bunch of words and says absolutely nothing. They should have been teaching her basic economic terms and going ahead and applying it, but absolutely no confidence there. And I hope that the people see that she really would not be a leader.
It's really downright scary. Back to your race, though, Lisa. Have you had any discussions with your opponent? Are there any potential debates on the horizon now that the fall season is just almost upon us?
I have one TV station that wants to do a debate. Unfortunately, though, we're still in the talks about that because they want it to be edited. So I used to be in the media field. I used to head up as a producer and as director. So I know you can time things out right to the second. So I told them, I said, the one time, because the media will not cover me. They cover her every day, no matter how many press releases and press conferences I have, they will not cover me, except for when I announced that I was running for office. And during that, they had the white balance completely off. The angles were bad and my sound was really bad. So you don't really have control of that, but I'm never going to allow somebody to edit my words. So until they can go ahead and agree that it's something that is live, so that way people can actually hear the issues and hear them right, I have put a hold on that. In the meantime, I keep talking to people on the back of my magazine, which is on my website. And thank you so much for mentioning about donations and volunteers and so forth. But what's just as important is the fact that I actually get to hear your voice, because that's what you're supposed to do, to listen to people and then start to figure out, does this make sense? How do I make this work? So I have my cell phone number on the back of my magazine, and I get calls all during the day. And it's so funny because a lot of the calls are people who tell me, my opponent won't answer this. I've tried forever. Can you research this for me? And it takes me literally minutes to get the answers for them. But, that is so important to me, to have people reach out, because they have all sorts of concerns. Seniors, they're afraid of, we have a high number of seniors that are abused, and they're afraid of reporting abuse. We have the veterans who feel that they've been ignored, and rightfully so. We have every single group that is suffering, and it's so important that I hear their voice.
Well, Lisa, listen, I'm rooting for you. Certainly a great grassroots campaign. I know what it's like I mentioned earlier, running for state assembly with no help from sort of the establishment party and operatives that, quite frankly, you would think that are hungry to help grassroots candidates, and people that want to do this, not just, hey, I just want to get into office. No, like grassroots candidates that want to make a difference. And again, I've been doing my homework on your campaign. Certainly your daughter's done, again, shout out to Nikki. Great job that she's done along with your team in really promoting what your campaign's all about. And it is grassroots. It is really about helping to elevate the quality of life for New York residents, for reducing taxation burdens, for at least trying to hold people in Albany accountable when it comes to the budget, when it comes to focusing on crime and trying to make sure that our police officers and our departments are properly funded, that we're giving residents at least some measure of hope, instead of like, well, you know what, let me just move to North Carolina, Florida, Georgia, or Texas because it's just more affordable, and they're all better states. Oh, by the way, Republican governors, by the way, just no coincidence.
The bottom line is, where do you have to run to eventually? Eventually, there's going to be nowhere to run. So you have to make a stand where you live.
Correct.
And New Jersey and New York, we're so fortunate because we have wonderful people in both states, beautiful landscapes, such an innovation. There's so much here. We just have to make the right choices in November.
I agree. Lisa, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I appreciate being a fan of my brand,
Absolutely.
journalism, and certainly, listen, I wish you the best of luck. Get to the finish line. Go win coming up on November the 5th. I'll give you the last word here tonight on Real Talk.
I just want to tell people, just remember that you've got the power to make a change. Don't be afraid. You can do it. We'll do it together. We will make the change that we all deserve.
Well, again, folks, visit electLisaOKeefe123.com for more information. Donate your time and or money. And certainly you can learn about this great grassroots campaign in the Empire State as she's running in District 123 in the State Assembly in the great state of New York. Lisa, I want to wish you the best of luck. Once again, enjoy the rest of your summer. Keep knocking on doors. Keep going to festivals. Keep that engagement out there. You're going to win hearts and minds if you keep up with this effort level. So, again, I want to wish you the best of luck. And we'll talk to you again soon here on Real Talk via Jersey First TV.
I would love that. Thank you.
Take care.
You too.
Folks, great stuff there with Lisa O'Keefe. And folks, again, and one of the things about this show that makes it as great as it is because I'm talking about politics in the tri-state area. Because, again, obviously a lot of what happens in New Jersey does affect New York. And certainly we've seen a lot of what happens in New York affects New Jersey. So I'm happy to talk to candidates and talk about the issues that matter to everyday New Jerseyans. Not identity, not pronouns, not this nonsense, folks. Stuff that really matters to everyday New Jerseyans, New Yorkers, everyone in the tri-state area, because again, we're all living here. We're all trying to get by. We're all trying to just live our lives. And it helps when legislators have our backs. And folks in Albany, I think it's a good choice to elect Lisa O'Keefe to the 123rd district in Albany in the state of New York. So again, check her out. Once again, elect Lisa O'Keefe123.com for more information. Of course, make sure you like her on Facebook. Of course, follow her on Instagram, certainly, and get involved with her campaign. Folks, it's 7 o'clock right on the dot here on the East Coast. Again, we appreciate you tuning in here. Great interview once again with State Assembly candidate in the 123rd District in the great state of New York, Lisa O'Keefe, here earlier tonight, folks. But as we all know, listen, there's always time to talk about a lot of things. And guess what? You know what it's time for? It's time for final thoughts. And folks, listen, I don't even know where to begin today. Okay, but there are a couple items on the news feed that caught my attention. And obviously, I don't like to read Insider NJ because unless I'm suffering from insomnia, right, and I need like a quick fix to go to sleep, sure, I'll go to Insider NJ's website, right? But unfortunately, this was brought to my attention by a plethora of people last week. And here's a good one here. Here is something that's going to make you laugh, okay? Allies are urging Governor Murphy, who's somewhere in Italy right now in his villa, to consider Patricia Campos Medina for Bob Menendez's Senate seat, which is, again, since he was convicted and he'll be stepping down, certainly under state law here in New Jersey, Governor Phil Murphy will be able to appoint someone temporarily in that seat to continue for the rest of Bob Menendez's term right now in the state of New Jersey. But so I'm going to read you this here. This column, I mean, folks, this is what's really egregious here. Because again, I'm not being mean-spirited. I'm not sexist. I'm not a misogynist. I don't hate women like some people, a lot of the online stalkers and haters want to claim. No, folks, I'm telling you the truth about Patty Campos Medina. She's a dangerous ideologue. Every single progressive policy she ever stands for has been destructive. It's caused the budget to balloon up in New Jersey. We've continued to coddle illegals when possible. Okay? This is a woman, okay, who's as far left as Bernie Sanders. Now, I get it that the people in the state of Vermont are stupid enough to keep reelecting this fool. But is this the type of person we want in New Jersey politics and in New Jersey government? Obviously not. Now, again, obviously her and her clueless, husband, Bob Medina, it's 702. Yeah, Bob's like, I think 87 years old. So I think it's way past Bobby's bedtime, right? So they probably won't see this, but, and shout out to Patty. I mean, obviously, it was interesting running into her at Son Cubano recently at the NJCU Foundation event there to honor Andres Acebo and all the great work he's doing there. Certainly the nice, dirty looks from everybody there, contingency from Hoboken, some far left people. Of course, getting those little stern looks from Patty. Patty, I get it. I'm flattered, but, you're not the first mom to stare at me when I walk into a room. So, again, take it easy. All right. But what's interesting here is a letter that was penned to Governor Murphy. On behalf of, and again, Insider NJ decides to publish it, which, by the way, folks, Insider NJ has zero credibility on this. This is a news site, and I use that term loosely because it's really a propaganda tool, right, for the far left in New Jersey, right, that willingly has taken money from Patricia Campos Medina, right? Now, when she was hosting that god-awful podcast, which I think had like a cap of like, I don't know, what was the max? Like 9 viewers? That includes Bobby, their kids, I don't know who else in the family, okay? But Patty Campos Medina is the same woman giving money to Insider NJ so they can publish her podcast. So when it comes to all these ridiculous power lists that Max Pizarro sits, let's be honest, folks, Max Pizarro doesn't leave his house. Okay, he should. He should leave his house to go to a barber and get some sort of haircut. For God's sakes. I don't think he's cut his hair since, George Bush was in office. The father, not the son. Okay. But Patty Campos Medina continues to give money to Insider NJ, and what a coincidence! Over the years, of course, not just only publicizing her podcast, giving her publicity, but also putting her on their ridiculous power lists. And I get it, Max. You never leave your house, and I get it that you spend X amount of hours during the day publishing these ridiculous power lists. Because, folks, let's be very honest. Have we yet to see a Hispanic power list or a Latinos power list? Right? Because if we do, I can name 2 people right off the top of my head that are more deserving than this clown. Coincidentally, one of them is her brother-in-law, Carlos Medina, the president and CEO of the statewide Hispanic Chamber of Commerce here in New Jersey, and also the executive director, Luis de la Hoz. Those are 2 prominent Hispanics that I would argue, if ever have to be put on a power list in New Jersey, it's them 2. Funny how ROI decides to name them, but Insider NJ can't. Kind of interesting, right? But more on that later. So, of course, on behalf of friends of Dr. Patricia Campos Medina, leaders and advocates sent the attached letter to Governor Murphy to consider her as an interim U.S. Senator. In addition, State Senator Troy Singleton earlier today in a Facebook post indicated his preference for Campos Medina to get the seat. Jesus Christ. Right? So here's a letter. The Honorable Phil Murphy, Governor of New Jersey, blah, 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 blah. We recommend that you appoint Dr. Patricia Campos Medina as interim senator to the seat vacated due to the resignation of Robert Menendez. First, in the June 4th Democrat primary election, Campos Medina came in second place and earned support from Democratic voters all across the counties of New Jersey. Folks, again, I mean, what were the choices? Andy Kim, a far-left ideologue, Patty Cash, as I like to refer to Patty Campos Medina, and Larry Ham. Not a big selection here, folks. So I mean, it's like, oh, gee, I don't know. What would I prefer to have? Syphilis or herpes? Or syphilis or chlamydia? It's like, really, is this what I have to choose from? Right? But that's the logic by people like Troy Singleton and the rest of the clowns who penned this letter. More on them later. Okay. All right. Campos Medina is a labor leader and progressive Democrat, respected for her professional accomplishments and her commitment to economic opportunity and fairness for all New Jersey families. Economic opportunity, how? She's a socialist. What socialist is ever for economic opportunity? Really? Troy? I mean, bro, come on, get your head out of your ass. She has served in several national legislative and policy roles in Washington, D.C. She is currently a labor researcher, policy innovator, and executive director of the Worker Institute at the School of Industrial and Labor Relations Council at Cornell University. She has led many legislative issues nationally and right here in New Jersey. Yeah, like giving driver's licenses to illegals. Yeah, like that's not going to make the road any less safer, right? Right, Troy? Right? Okay. Or taking taxpayer dollars, right, and putting them into a legal fund and then appropriating that into the state budget, Troy, to provide legal representation for illegals fighting deportation, right? Okay. Is that the policies you're talking about, Troy? Right? And everybody else on this list, right? Okay. I just want to make sure that, again, that your head's not so far up your ass you can't see the forest from the trees, right? Okay. We are confident that as interim senator, she will lead on issues of importance to all New Jersey in coordination with all members of the current congressional delegation in a manner that will allow for easy transition when the senator is elected in the November 2024 general election. As leaders, and that's, folks, I use that term loosely because when I read you some of the names here, these are clowns who I wouldn't trust to run a lemonade stand in the middle of a heat wave. More on that later. We know that this moment of transition is also an opportunity to recognize the importance of the Latino community, whose political representation is drastically declining with the departure of the current senator. Appointing Patricia Campos Medina is a show of good faith to Latinos, that as we are one of New Jersey's largest voting blocs, with an economic contribution of billions of dollars to the economy of our great state. As the progressive leader of the Democrat Party in New Jersey, you can also strengthen your legacy in the history books by appointing the first woman, the first Latina, and the first woman of color to the U.S. Senate in this critical moment. Respectfully, the people of New Jersey. Now, folks, the people of New Jersey consists of these clowns. Patricia Bouillon. Again, I wouldn't trust this woman to pick poultry in a supermarket or in a bodega, so please. Let me see who else here. Leda Flores, otra mujer that I wouldn't trust her to pick fruit at a produce stand and tell me what's ripe and what isn't. Okay, what else here? Ooh, this is a good one. Christina Cole, who, by the way, her name is Christina Pinzon, another math whiz, right? The executive director of stateside affairs, a useless lobby group in New Jersey, right? Another one who coddles illegals and subscribes to left-wing policies, but somehow I'm supposed to take Christina seriously? Okay. Who else here? Oh, a rabid anti-Semite like Sadaf Jafar, former assemblywoman, and we all know she's a rabid anti-Semite, right? She clearly is anti-Israel, anti-Jewish residents. We know this. You can read her social media. I haven't been able to lately because she's blocked me because I called her out on her nonsense, right? By the way, shout out to Steve Fulop for hiring someone like Sadaf Jafar to his staff. Wow, it doesn't say a lot about you, Stephen, when you hire blatant anti-Semites like Sadaf Jafar, right? Who else here? Carmen Molina. Who? Okay. Maria Andrade. Who? Laura Gaviria. Who? Who else? Jess Abreu. Who? Who else? La Doctora Reina Pidiet. Who? Who are these people? Who are these slapnuts that we're supposed to take seriously? Are there any prominent names on this list that I'm supposed to take seriously? Right? Okay, who else here? Let me see. Nairobi Vargas. Who? Okay. Councilwoman Sandra Whitner. Who? Let me see here. Maria Diaz. ¿Quién ella? Manuela Gaviria. Who? ¿Quién es esa mujer? Who are these clowns? Troy, if you're going to collaborate with people, okay, and ask them to put their name to paper, can you get some credible people here, please? Not just some bunch of slapnuts and ham and eggers in New Jersey politics and in activism or whatever, to just say, oh, I'm going to sign my name to a far left propagandist because, hey, why not, you know? As if Patty Campos Medina hasn't effed up enough things. Yeah, let's put her in the United States Senate, right, on an interim basis to go to Washington and place votes on pertinent issues. Really? Okay. Again, a woman who doesn't have one policy prescription that has ever helped New Jerseyans overall, not just one sector, not just one population, right, but all New Jerseyans, right, from all socioeconomic backgrounds, right? A woman that, let's be honest, whether it's starting up organizations like Lupe or joining with like the Latino Action Network and these far left organizations that do nothing for New Jerseyans. They do nothing. But somehow, esto imbécil, aquí, all of them, think that she's a good fit to go to Washington to represent this great state. Okay, folks, we already have one U.S. Senator here in New Jersey, Cory Booker, who, let's be honest, take your pick about the number of times he embarrassed himself on air with some of the takes he has. Okay? But now, Troy Singleton and this lollipop guild of people in New Jersey. Here's some other names. Esperanza Porras Field. Who? Jimmy Parra. Who? Candido Rodriguez. ¿Quién son esta gente? Estos son clowns. I'm supposed to take this list seriously? But again, folks, are you really surprised when it comes to unserious conversations when you have an unserious site like Insider NJ? And I get it that Pete O'Neill, the general manager, loves taking money for advertising. We see it, CWA, NJEA, AFT. We get it. As he sits at home in Hawthorne in his cozy little job, making high six figures, right? Let's be honest, folks. Is this really the lack of integrity we want from a news site? Of course not. Because anybody knows when it comes to news sites, nobody takes Insider NJ seriously. Of course you can't. You have clowns like Bob Hennelly, Alan Steinberg, Jay Lasser, more on little JJ later, Max Pizarro. Folks, do I have to say anything else about the ongoing joke that is Insider NJ when it comes to establishment media in the state of New Jersey? When everybody knows that when you want to read the news and you want to get the news and good quality news, nobody relies on Insider, folks. Everybody goes to David Wildstein and the New Jersey Globe. And I don't just say that because he's a friend of mine and he respects this program and my brand, but because anyone who's objective and intellectually honest, right, none of which are characteristics that are exhibited by anybody at Insider NJ, would know that the New Jersey Globe is who you trust for news, not Insider NJ. And columns like this, folks, propaganda and garbage like this, you know where it belongs? It belongs in the trash. Speaking of trash, let's move on to, and again, let's sort of stay on Insider NJ. Let's move on to one of the biggest trash humans in New Jersey media, and that's Jay Lasseter. Now, again, Jay, I mean, I don't know what's up with this profile picture. I don't know if you had a flashback to when you were working street corners back in the day to score smack. And again, folks, before anyone menstruates, before anyone has some sort of meltdown or tantrum, those are not my words. Those are his characterizations of his past. So I'm not saying something that's not true. So take it easy. But Jay Lasseter, again, the resident clown in New Jersey media, one of them, of course, and he works at Insider NJ whenever he feels like publishing a column, right, has the audacity to go after one of the hardest working legislators in Trenton. And that's my mayor and state senator, Brian Stack, in the 33rd Legislative District. Let me just read you a couple of these tweets, because again, I screenshot them there. You may not be able to see them. But I want you to have an idea of what it sounds like. Okay? So here we go. Now, Jay Lassiter, when he's not fixating on weed or whatever else, or spending his husband's money, because let's be honest, folks, when was the last time that Jay Lassiter ever worked a hard day in his life? Right? I can't remember. Right? So, of course, Jay Lassiter decides to go after Senate President Nick Scutari and says, I support and applaud my colleague and friend Brian Stack for his exemplary dedication and resilience in the face of recent political attacks. Yes, Jay, you live in Cherry Hill, okay? You don't know what it's like to have a good mayor. Okay, let's be completely honest here about what this is. To think that David Fleischer, your mayor in Cherry Hill, is anywhere even near the same universe as Brian Stack is laughable. Okay, more on that later. Okay? But here's a tweet here. Public service is never easy, and Brian's staunch commitment to our state and community should be celebrated. Of course, Jay can't help himself, so he decides to say clueless clowns like Vin Gopal, another state senator who's openly shown support for State Senator Stack, and Senate President Scutari put out statements like this, not only realizing it had the exact opposite effect intended. Here's another one in response to Vin Gopal's tweet over the weekend. No one works harder for the constituents than my friend Brian Stack. When I see Brian, he is always working hard on behalf of his constituents. The actions by Leroy Truth, a.k.a. Leonard Lebowski, who spends his professional livelihood personally attacking someone's family, is disgusting. That's true, Jay. Again, that will require you to have what's called, wait for it, integrity. But we all know Jay Lassiter doesn't have any. Okay? Of course, Jay decides, and again, and this is what's really courageous about Jay, because unlike you, Jay, when I take shots at somebody online, I'll tag them because I have what's, again, another word that you struggle with, right? The two-syllable word now, courage. I'll say it again, courage. Okay? In regards to Brian, Jay decides to write, no one works harder on being shady and corrupt than Brian Stack. Your property taxes are through the roof because Brian Stack treats the public sector like it's its own personal private candy store. No, Jay, that's not true. That's not true at all. As a homeowner here in Union City, I can tell you that, again, State Senator Stack and Mayor Stack has done an exceptional job of keeping property taxes reasonable, making sure our police departments are well funded. Okay? Because that's what he does. That's the leadership that Brian Stack exhibits. Okay? To think that your mayor, David Fleischer, is anywhere near what Brian Stack is laughable. And don't ever even try to put that out there in writing. Okay? These attacks by Leonard Flapowski, and now we're seeing Stephen Fulop, now the mayor of Jersey City, who, by the way, you seem to be happily retweeting at all moments. Right? These are the people going after Brian Stack. A mayor who funds an exceptional police department, the best in the state. Okay? Our quality of life in Union City, Jay, is as good as anybody's. Why? Because Brian believes in funding a police department, making sure that our quality of life is important, making sure there are foot patrols in the summer, winter, fall, and spring. That our public schools are funded. Hey, by the way, Jay, during COVID, when you were one of these little slap nuts walking around with a mask and raising hysteria and demonizing people like me who's not vaccinated, right? And didn't buy into the whole COVID hysteria like you did, okay? Guess what? During COVID, guess what public schools exhibited the least amount of learning loss? You know what school district that was, Jay? It wasn't Cherry Hill. It was Union City. Due to the great leadership by our Mayor Brian Stack, of course, our superintendent of schools, and the great staff that is the Union City School District. But Jay wouldn't know about that. Okay? When it comes to making sure that our schools are funded, that we're having brand new schools built in Union City and in the 33rd Legislative District, that were helping to get funds into the 33rd Legislative District. Case in point today in the town of West New York, a township in the 33rd Legislative District. For the longest time, the town of West New York has been yearning for a rec center and a new public library. Through the hard work of the mayor there, Albio Ceres, the administration there, along with State Senator Stack, that dream is now becoming a reality in West New York because of Brian's leadership, working with, obviously, Trenton and the local municipalities to make sure that that project will get off the ground. Okay? That's the leadership that Brian Stack exhibits, Jay. Which is more than, you know what, a lot of people that you seem to be infatuated with. So, if State Senator Gopal, State Senate President Scutari, and other prominent Democrats, even U.S. Representative Josh Gottheimer, okay, who, by the way, spoiler alert, is going to win that primary next June. You can book it right now at 7/21 on August the 12th of 2024. I called it. That's who's winning the Democrat primary next June. I know that's a tough pill for you to swallow, Jay, but that's the truth. Even he recognizes the great leadership of Brian Stack. Even Rob Menendez, who, again, I know you have this hard on perpetually for Bob and Rob, and you were openly cheering for clowns like Ravi Bala to challenge him in the primary, and thankfully, Ravi Bala was soundly defeated. Okay? For someone like Jay Lasser, who doesn't even live in Hudson County, to opine, Jay, why doesn't your scrawny little ass ever come up to Hudson County to events here, whether it's cheering on Ravi Bala or Leonard Fopowski or Stephen Fulop? Oh, again, that will require you to actually do some work and make an effort. Because, Jay, there's more to life than just smoking bongs, Jay.
Looking for a sign whether to do a bong hit or not. This is definitely your sign. Happy Friday.
Folks, again, this is the clown that we are supposed to take seriously in New Jersey media. Okay? Jay, stop going after hardworking, dedicated public officials like Brian Stack. And I'm going to personalize this again because it bears repeating. Okay? Pre-COVID, during COVID, after COVID, when residents needed housing, when residents needed help, guess who was there 24 hours a day? Not just Brian. Again, I want to give respect also to his hardworking commissioners, Salim Valdivia, Lucio Fernandez, okay, Marjorie Martinetti, Wendy Gruon, and all the hardworking people, okay, his chief of staff, Idali Henao, and all the hardworking people at 3715 Palisade Avenue in Union City. Because, Jay, when people need relief and help, Brian Stack has been there for them. You think your mayor, David Fleischer, or other mayors in Hudson County, when people and their loved ones pass away, especially during COVID, when we all know that funeral costs are up the roof. Jay, I'm going to personalize this for you right now because this is how much I despise you, how much I loathe your existence, because how dishonest you are. Okay, I'm going to give you this example just to prove a point here. Okay? During COVID, my grandmother passed away at 102 years old. And she was as popular a person as there ever was in Union City. She had a street named after her. I doubt anyone will ever want to name a street after you, Jay. Okay? And during that time when Governor Phil Murphy kept the state closed longer than it should have, and funerals were only, accessible but to immediate family only, guess who reached out to me when my grandmother passed, who was my world, who helped raise me since I was a baby? Brian did. When it came to helping out with funeral costs, because funeral costs are expensive. Okay? Guess who went out of their way to make sure to help residents like myself and others who lost loved ones during COVID? It was Brian Stack. Is David Fleischer doing that? Are mayors like Nick Sacco doing that? Is Stephen Fulop doing that? No, of course not. But you know who is? Brian Stack is. So you can take your little sanctimony, you take a little fake outrage, okay, and you know where to stick it. Okay? Because that's all Jay Lasser is good for. Fake outrage, sanctimony, and all the nonsense that comes with being Jay Lasser. Okay? Jay, would it kill you to publish a column once in a while? Would it kill you to do some work instead of living off your husband's money? And I get it again, you know, an honest day's work for you is a long time ago, my man. Okay? But folks, let's be honest here. This crackhead right behind me wants you to take him seriously when it comes to political takes. Okay? Folks, Brian Stack epitomizes leadership. Brian Stack epitomizes commitment to his community, not just Union City, the city, but all the municipalities in the 33rd Legislative District. That's who Brian Stack is. Not some nonsense that Stephen Fulp wants to concoct, or Nick Sacco wants to concoct, or Leonard Flipowski wants to concoct. And now, this crackhead behind me, Jay Lasser. Again, Jay, I don't know what prompted this profile picture. Wearing a downright garbage cap from a garbage franchise. Figures you'd go to Baltimore. You fit right in there. Okay? But do me a favor, Jay. Have your facts right when it comes to what public officials you want to go after. Because the last person you should ever go after is the hardest working mayor and state senator in New Jersey government. And that's Brian Stack. You should know better. Put down the bong. I know that's all you live for. That's all.
For a sign, whether to do a bong hit or not. This is definitely your sign. Happy Friday.
Folks, have you ever seen a grown man in his late 70s as obsessed with marijuana as Jay Lasser? Actually, maybe kind of close. You know, Waldo over there in upstate New York. You know, Matt Freeman, the lazy editor of the New Jersey Playbook, which, by the way, folks, I mean, you want to talk about lazy. You want to talk about fixation on weed. I know Matt, look at me, finally shaved, thank goodness. He doesn't look like he's living under a bridge. But I can't imagine two more useless people in media. But Jay's got him beat. Jay, do us all a favor. Again, practice what's called, wait for it, integrity. Because if you're going to go after an elected official, there's plenty where you live in Camden County. You should start looking down the street in Cherry Hill, not up here in Hudson County. You're not welcome here, and honestly, your opinions aren't either. And those are my final thoughts. Folks, before we call it a night, I want to start a new segment here, and occasionally on this program, I want to send a shout out to Fernando fans in the great state of New Jersey, but all across this great country of ours. I had the pleasure and privilege of traveling to the freedom-loving state of Florida last week. Great trip with my family. Get away, get some sun, get some work done, eat some good Cuban food. But along the way, I get to meet Fernando fans. And I want to send a shout out to this great gentleman behind me, Luis Castellanos, an avid fan of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe, shares the podcast. I love you for that. Thank you, Luis. A guy who appreciates exceptional journalism when he sees it, right? A guy who's a patriot, a hardworking Cuban immigrant, a guy who cares about his country. These are the Fernando fans that make this show possible. And from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of the Uribe Gonzalez family, to Luis Castellano and everybody over there, to Cookie, to everybody, we love you all. And Luis, specifically to you, thank you for being a fan of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe. Thank you for believing in Fernando Uribe, in my brand of journalism. Thank you for believing in me as a person. It means the world to me. And again, thank you for taking the time you do every week to watch the show, to show your support on social media. And more importantly, thanks for the gifts last week, those great caps. As you can see there, were gifts to me during my recent trip to Miami. Luis, thank you. God bless you. And quite frankly, folks, when we talk about great Fernando Uribe fans, it starts with Luis Castellanos. So love you, man. Te quiero mucho. Gracias por ser un fanático de Real Talk con Fernando Uribe aquí on Jersey First TV. Te quiero mucho y que siga fuerte y te veo pronto. And once again, folks, Love you, Luis. Thank you for being a fan. And thank you for supporting real journalism because it's real talk. And that's our show for this week, folks. Once again, I want to thank Assembly candidate in the great state of New York in District 123, Lisa OKeefe, for her appearance tonight. Great episode, obviously. And I can't say enough about all of you that, again, like, comment, and share tonight's episode as you do every single week. Folks, that's why the traffic is real. Not like the Mickey Mouse traffic that, all these Mickey Mouse journalists in New Jersey have. You know who I'm talking about, right? Tom Moran, David Cruz, Max Pizarro, Charles Style, Terrence McDonald, Jay Lassiter, right? Bob Hennelly, Alan Steinberg, all these Mickey Mouse journalists with the little Mickey Mouse traffic and the little Mickey Mouse columns. Folks, it's the only traffic they know is on the Turnpike or Route 3 or Route 78 or Route 18. But here, it's always real traffic with real talk. Folks, again, you make this success possible. Thank you for sharing all of our great content. Make sure you like us on social media. Make sure you like us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Make sure you click the subscribe button. Okay? And make sure you let everybody know how much you enjoy Real Talk with Fernando Uribe here on Jersey First TV. Of course, download it on Spotify or SoundCloud and take Jersey First with you anywhere you go, whether you're going down the shore to Tiki Mondays in Point Pleasant, whether you're coming back, whether you're going school shopping with your kids for new clothes, for new tech, new toys, whatever the case may be, new stationery. You have your smartphone with you, right? Check out Jersey First when you have it with you anywhere and everywhere during the summer of 2024. Folks, I can't say enough how privileged I am to be on the dream team of Garden State Media. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It's always Jersey First TV, educating and advocating for the great state of New Jersey and its residents. Folks, always doing it here on Real Talk with Fernando Uribe every Monday night. Check your local listings, of course. And, of course, also on Thursdays, check out brand new episodes of The Nader Narrative hosted by the amazing Elizabeth Nader. And, of course, brand new episodes of Bridging the Gap with AJ Melillo and Seema Rimbolo. Folks, all that great content brought to you by Jersey First TV every single week. As I mentioned before, check out all of our great social media links. And, of course, check out our website, jerseyfirst.org/TV. Click the menu, and you'll see all of our episodes there. You can watch them anywhere at any time. Folks, can't say it enough. It's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid. It's always Real Talk right here with Jersey First TV, of course, for the best analysis and commentary about everything going on in New Jersey politics, in tri-state politics, and national politics. Look no further. Once again, Real Talk right here on Jersey First TV. I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist. Top Latino was voted on by the Latino Spirit Online magazine, of course, along with the United States Latino Affairs Initiative. And without a doubt, folks, I'll continue to be the weapon of mass disruption in Garden State Media because my level of honesty, now more than ever, is truly necessary in this era of journalistic deception. That's right, folks. It's me, Fernando Uribe. Thank you so much for watching, folks. Again, please party responsibly as we sort of finish up with the summer of 2024. Again, take care of yourselves. Look after your elderly neighbors, kids, everything, folks. Again, please party responsibly. Download the episodes, share them. I really appreciate your support here on the podcast every single week. Thanks for stopping by. And always remember, folks, stay classy, everyone.